This is Frankie Lynch, Saturn Girl. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and comment below. I want to know what you think, and it helps me out with the algorithm. You know what? Share these things, please. I'm trying to make this channel a thing. And I put a lot of effort into this stuff, and I think it's great information, so please do me a favor and share my shit. Okay, so anyway, I did want to talk about a fun little transit happening in just a few days. So on Thursday, July 28th, Mercury will leave Leo and enter his home sign and sign of exaltation, Virgo. So what does this mean for us? What does this mean? And why is Mercury in here for so long? He's going to stay in Virgo from July until October 4th. Oh my gosh, that was my dad's birthday. Why so long? Well, he stations retrograde on August 23rd and will continue his backtrack until September 14th or so. I will do a separate video on Mercury retrograde as we get closer and your horoscopes for it. So don't worry, we're not going to talk about the retrograde today. We will do it later, so stay tuned. Anyway, what does this mean for us? Well, what is Mercury? Mercury's speech and thought, writing, expression, messages, news, skills, learning, even gambling and deception. Wheeling and dealing. Now, what is Virgo? Virgo is the feminine, mutable, earthy home of Mercury and his sign of exaltation. So you may remember that a planet being in its own sign is the most dignified placement for it, whereas a planet in its sign of exaltation is the next best. So you see, I have some sort of ideas why I think Virgo is both ruled by Mercury and its sign of exaltation. So, well, I think of Mercury ruling Gemini, or I think of Gemini in general as Mercury turned outwards, sort of like buckshot, just like spraying out, like going out into things and into the world, to taste everything in the candy shop. Whereas Virgo is like Mercury turned inward, more like a laser beam, or, I don't want to talk about weapons. I almost did. But you see what I'm saying? It's like a laser beam focus, right? Whereas it's more introspective, investigative, and analytical. It knows how to take systems apart and see how the parts fit together. It's not so good at the whole picture like Aquarius Mercury sort of is, but it can see the internal workings. So I think of, again, investigation, introspection, and analysis. And the funny thing about analysis is you can't spell it without anal, And what do we know Virgo for? Having a stick up their proverbial, Anyway, the other thing, understanding how things work, as we said, right? Understanding how things work, this sort of, leads to people thinking they know everything and the best, course of action for people to do. So the harder side of what this looks like is being critical, right? Because Mercury turned inwards it's going to take things apart and be like, well, I don't like that, and I do like this, and right? Getting anxious, right? We know how Virgos can be, especially Virgo moon and Mercury. It can be quite anxious, you see. Don't start giving them all sorts of contingencies or different options because you'll run them ragged, right? Getting stuck in your head. Get out of your head. How often do we sit there brooding on things that haven't even happened yet, or things we don't even remember correctly, right? We need to get out of our heads. And sometimes there's a fear of speaking up, right? You can have wonderful communicative ability, But the idea of standing up for yourself and expressing or voicing your own desires and interests can be absolutely terrifying, can't it? But this is another lesson we have to work on, especially for our Virgo friends, right? In fact, I see this with Virgo, Libra, and Pisces pretty frequently. So anyway, what is Mercury in Virgo? What does it mean for individuals in your particular natal chart? It can be very intelligent and discerning. This is the highest place for Mercury to be. Mercury rules Gemini, but to me, it's far more refined in Virgo. And I say this as a Gemini sun. So it also knows what it likes, right? Which can go for good or for ill, you know, can go to the hypercritical side. It also sees how things work, as we said earlier. And what does this result in oftentimes? People being Mr. or Ms. Fix-It. Well, this is how you do that. And this is how you do this. Oh, no. This fits together like that. And do. I knew a partner's dad who was a Virgo. And just, you know, with cars and all that, just knew all the intricate workings and just how it all fit together. Right? So, but when it came to the business side, that was more difficult because it's harder to see the big picture. So the other thing about this is it's working the system, right? So micromanaging, right? Because it knows what it wants, but then it changes its mind a lot. So the micromanaging thing is just sort of like, they're not following my expectations, so I'll just do it. But then there's this passive aggressive element where it's sort of like I'll do it, but you know, I'm going to give you lots of crap. I'm going to make you feel extra guilty, right? Something that, you know, Virgos and Cancers and Pisces, typically the water signs are very good at, but Virgo's also very adept. So along with the micromanaging, it could be manipulative, right? And the micromanaging thing can be manipulative too, trying to goad people into doing what you want them to do using guilt and other things, right? We also see scheming and plotting. And the passive-aggressive nature makes it look more deceptive, right? Because there's this internal fear of being open or direct, oftentimes. Well, what does this look like in practice? Why don't we look at some celebrities or famous people with Mercury in Virgo? So the first one I picked out was former President Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ as we knew him. So he was the vice president under John F. Kennedy, JFK, until the assassination. Then he assumed office, but then was reelected again in 1964, I believe. So he was known as the master of the Senate. Famous biographer Robert Caro titled his biography on LBJ thusly, the master of the Senate. He knew how to use that Mercury in Virgo and to work the system, to manipulate people to vote how he wanted them to. In fact, he even rigged elections, according to Robert Caro. He stuffed ballot boxes. He bussed in people who were going to vote democratically or vote for him. He was a very shrewd man, but also accomplished some great things like the Civil Rights Act of 1965 and the Voting Rights Act, or maybe it's 1964, and then the Voting Rights Act of 1965. You see, these were integral into the advancement of Black people in the United States. So, very interesting person who was able to use that Mercury in Virgo in very creative and sometimes deceptive ways. The other one I picked out was former President Jimmy Carter. Now, he was a Libra, right? And he was known as sort of the mediator and the deal broker, right? He was the president following Gerald Ford, who took over after Richard Nixon resigned. So Jimmy Carter's presidency was sort of like a reaction or a backlash to the corruption of the establishment and the Republican Party at the time. So anyway, He did know how to work the system. He was known for narrowly winning elections on his way up, right? He was a governor, I believe, and a senator. So he was able to work his constituency and voters in order to get elected. Now, he also was known for brokering peace, which people see as primarily a Libra thing, and it sort of is. But he needed that Mercury in Virgo wheeling and dealing nature, because he didn't exactly achieve peace in the Middle East, obviously. But he did broker a peace between Israel and Egypt that ended a war between them, essentially. I think it was called the Israeli-Egyptian War. Don't quote me on that. But he was able to bring them both together. Now, they didn't agree on the West Bank and Gaza, but they did agree on a ceasefire. Egypt formally recognized Israel, and I believe Israel did agree to democratic elections in the West Bank and Gaza. Anyway, whole other thing. Ooh, another great one I picked. Speaking of Mercury, Freddie Mercury. That wasn't his real name. He was born Farouk. I'm sorry, I can't remember. But anyway, he was the flamboyant frontman of the famous band Queen, the epic band Queen. Oh my God! And we all know the recent film that came out, Bohemian Rhapsody, featuring the song Bohemian Rhapsody. And the amazing thing about Freddie Mercury is he really was a micromanager and a very, very detail-oriented or precise artist. He wrote 10 of the 17 songs on Queen's best or greatest hits, including Bohemian Rhapsody, which was an example of a compendium of complex rhythms, structures, harmonies, and myriad chords. He was a very detail-oriented creator who knew exactly what he wanted. So even on Bohemian Rhapsody, he layered 160 vocal tracks. In fact, he was layering so many that he would lose the previous tracks on the tape. So he would keep adding Galileo. Like, how many Galileos are you going to add? Galileo Figaro. It was all the Galileos and Figaros that he kept doing. So anyway, now what happened last time Mercury was in Virgo? Well, it was August of last year. So what happened August of 2022? Well, number one, Alex Jones, the famous conspiracy radio host, was ordered to pay $4.1 million in damages to the parents of the children of those who were unalived in the Sandy Hook massacre. For those of us who have children, we can't even imagine, we can't even fathom the pain that they must feel. And added on top of that, to be harassed by Jones's viewers and listeners, by people who are very aggressive. I can't imagine something more awful. So, well, anyway, the interesting thing about Mercury in Virgo here is Jones claimed many false things about what happened in this event. And so he even claimed that people who were hurt were crisis actors. So his deception was uncovered. The reason I'm chuckling is because his legal team sent all of Alex Jones's text messages and communications from his phone to the Sandy Hook parents' legal team, the opposing legal team. And in those messages, apparently he even had transgender, right? People like me in naughty situations, right? So obviously, Mr. Truther is also a chaser. Oh my gosh. I wonder if he watches me. Anyway, so You see, and Mercury rules what? Communications and investigation. So anyway, another event that we had was the U.S. Senate passed the Inflation Reduction Act. This was a sweeping economic package, which allocated funds not only for climate change and infrastructure, but also for workers. And bringing down healthcare costs, as well as raising taxes on big corporations. And this took a lot of Mercury in Virgo wheeling and dealing, especially from the Biden team. So in order to get this even passed, because he tried as hard as heck with Build Back Better. And well, I don't know how hard he tried, but Build Back Better didn't happen. And the Inflation Reduction Act, or the IRA, actually will do lots of good over time, because these funds are allocated over what? Over time. Now let's see what sort of happens in the future with all this. But then the third thing I wanted to mention was the FBI conducted an investigation, or search rather, of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. And this was over his handling of classified documents, which we see now. These cases are sort of exploding. And you think about the investigative impulse, the search here, it's very Virgo Mercury, right? Investigation, going deep into things, taking pieces apart. Now, what does Mercury in Virgo mean for you? Well, whatever house Mercury is entering for you, and whatever house he rules in your chart, will tell you something about the emphasis that this transit will bring to you. It'll probably be an emphasis on thought and consideration around this area of life. So this may also be where you need to work on discernment and be poised, ready for whatever happens. More introverted thoughts and a more difficult time speaking up for yourself or representing your interests. So that's something you have to remember. There can be, well, the reluctance to speak up can lead to underhanded activities, because when we don't voice our desires and our feelings, then we try and ameliorate our situation in all other sorts of crazy ways, which can cause trouble for us and for others. But overall, this is a great time for writing, speaking, or educational projects, whether it's yourself learning a new skill or taking a training course or whatever. But this is a time to improve your mind. Mercury is the mind. And when you think about it, mind is sort of the definitive or distinguishing characteristic of humanity. In fact, the word man comes from the Sanskrit manas as one of its etymological sources. Manas in Sanskrit means mind. So it very much indicates that mind is the discerning characteristic of humanity, and man in that context wasn't gendered. It had to do with humanity, right? So it has to do with mind. Now, horoscopes for each rising sign. So let's start with Aries Rising, shall we? So we've got Aries Rising up on the board here. So Aries Rising. Mercury enters your 6th house of obligations and rules your 3rd of community and extended family. So some phrases I thought of here were mind on things that you gotta do. That means attending to chores or responsibilities, going to the doctor or attending to health complications, getting news about your family, like extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, your brothers and sisters, siblings. But also there could be medical news for you, like test results, lab results, or whatever. Now let's talk about our Taurus Rising friends. So Taurus Rising means Mercury enters your 5th house of children and fun and rules your 2nd house of money, right? So what does this mean? Well, your mind is on your fun and or your kids. So this could entail dropping some dough, some money on your kids going to fun places, or maybe just going to the pool or the trampoline park or a carnival, right? Going to do some short outings or nice things for yourself. You know, wine tasting, horse race. I'm thinking of like bougie things, I guess. You know, horse races, concerts. I guess those are bougie now because they're so darn expensive. Sports games, same sort of thing. Looking for romance or mingling, right? Going out, singles mingles, right? I don't know. Sounds fun. Although there's someone I like already, so. I'm enjoying our time. Well, what about Gemini rising? So Gemini is, or sorry, that means Mercury is going through your fourth house here, Virgo, right? And, excuse me, rules your first house, Gemini. So this means mind on your past, really. And what do I mean by that? So you could be contemplating or finding out something new about your origin story, childhood, or genealogy. Maybe you just have a focus on it and want to share about it or research it or find out more. Now, this could also be messages from your parents or news about them, right? And it would have to be something that would particularly affect you or involve you in some way, since your first house is involved. Now, this could also entail news or messages regarding your living situation. So I'm thinking like landlords, HOAs, property management companies, all that sort of stuff. Now, what about our Cancer rising friends? Cancer rising. So Mercury is going through your third house of community and extended family, and then rules your 12th house of self-undoing and isolation and confinement, right? So what am I thinking about? Well, your mind on your community. Now, I think of typically something like local trips and excursions, but there's an element of being confined here. Maybe you wanted to go on a longer vacation or a trip somewhere farther away or out of state or out of country even. But instead, you're staying in your town, you're staying overnight in a hotel or whatever. But even though it might be a nice respite, there's still a sense of being confined or unable to spread your wings, right? Now, we also think about working or jobs around the community, things that, again, sort of confine you or take your time, right? Like you have to go to the DMV or you have to go to this or do that. Or the dog pound. I don't know. There's all sorts of, I think of the dog pound as more 6th house, but, institutions, 12th house. You see? Now, there could be, again, news or messages from extended family, particularly regarding addiction or drugs or jail or something. You could find out someone went to jail. You could have to bail someone out. Or it could just be attending to a mental health issue for one of them or for yourself. Now, how about our Leo rising friends? Ooh, I love Leo rising. And I am seeing a beautiful, wonderful Leo rising. Excuse me. Now, that means for our Leo rising friends, Mercury's going through your 2nd house of money and rules your 11th house of hopes and wishes and friends. So that means I got my mind on my money and my money on my mind, right? Like Snoop Dogg. I always say that when it comes to Mercury's 2nd house. But anyway, this could entail budgeting more for, your own business or whatever, not so much like in your job. That's more 8th house. But budgeting for your business or asking for a raise. Trying to improve your financial situation at your current job, perhaps. Now, this also could entail business strategy. I mean, if you're like, I keep thinking about my own situation having a small business. You have to strategery, right? As George W. Bush said. Well, that wasn't really George W. Bush. It was Will Ferrell playing George W. Bush. And he said, strategery. I mean, the word is strategy, for those of you who don't know. Anyway, so business strategy being very mercurial. Financial planning. So Mercury and the 11th house being hopes, wanting to improve your situation. Now, this could also be friends asking for money or wanting to borrow money, or it could be you wanting to borrow money from friends. Um, Also, you might consider money-making schemes, multi-level marketing, or if you just get 3 people under you, that kind of stuff. I don't know. But let's look at Virgo rising now. And we love our Virgo rising friends because this puts Mercury in the first house of self, and then he rules the 10th house of action, life direction, praxis. So now this means your mind on you and your accomplishments, right? Now, Mercury rejoices in the first house. And as I said before, I think of it as because mind is the definitive characteristic of humanity, of people, of us. And the first house is you, and Mercury is mind. So it's almost saying like, you are mind, or a part of the greater mind, whatever that means. A fragment of the universal mind. Again, what does that mean? I don't know. Go find out. So, now you may be quite used to people pleasing, but this is a time to think about what you want to do. We need you for the self-realization effort, whatever that is. So now I also see this as standing up for yourself and representing your own interests because it is the first house. This is the keenness of mind and being able to use your mind very confidently. Now, this could also entail getting recognition for past accomplishments, or, accomplishments in general. Something you're working on now, a project, or even a collaboration, right? Now, what about our Libra Rising friends? Libra Rising. So this puts Mercury in the 12th house of self-undoing. But it rules the 9th house of wisdom and spirituality and all that fun stuff. So what is your mind on? Well, not much. Not your mind. You're off on La La Land. There was an old Simpsons where Homer says, what is mind? No matter. What is matter? Never mind. I think of that as like the 12th house thing here. Now, signs don't equal houses necessarily, but it also reminds me of Pisces sort of stuff, So anyway, now what is this? Is this like a sense of confusion or not being clear, like needing clarity on a circumstance in your life? We can be enveloped or confined even by a new idea, teaching, or worldview. You see, it takes us inside, inward, and out of our typical social connections and all this stuff that Libra Rising tends to have. This makes us a bit more introverted and introspective and feeling like, we're sort of trapped. But there's good things about this because it's forcing us to contemplate big things. Now, this can also make us want to be quiet, not wanting to talk, to retreat into our cave. And it could also correlate with feelings of melancholy or slight depression. It can be sweet sorrow. Now, how about our Sagittarius, what about our Scorpio rising friends? Our Scorpio rising friends. We love them, don't we? So this is Mercury going through the 11th house and ruling the 8th. So the 11th house, remember, it's hopes and friends. And the 8th house here is death, debt, and other people's stuff. So this means our mind is on our aspirations and dreams, 11th house stuff. And since it's the 8th house, it could result in compensation in some way for those hopeful endeavors. Like I think about advertising and social media a lot. We could be investing in advertising and social media, right? Our presence there for our business. Or we could be getting paid from it, from tech platforms or social media, right? You could be receiving donations like from Patreon or whatever. Things that give you financial support in whatever you're working on. It could also be having to pay people back or lend people money. And it would likely be 11th house people, so friends or whatever, fans. I also think about getting compensation from fans, right? We talked about donations, but subscribers and things like that. I mean, there's different ways of getting money and all that from your supporters, but I mean, it takes all of us really contributing in different ways to keep all this stuff going. Well, anyway, let's go to our Sagittarius rising friends. So that means Mercury's traveling through your 10th house here and rules your 7th house of partnerships. And remember, the 10th is action and life direction. So this means your mind is on what you do or your life direction, right? So this could entail new positions opening up at work. Maybe you got to apply for something new. I mean, I think about the recruitment process in general, whether you're conducting it or going through it yourself as a candidate for employment. I think of working on resumes. It's very Mercury Virgo and having to do with your life direction, right? Excuse me. And the interesting thing about resumes is, employers frequently only read a little bit at a time, which is very mercurial. So make sure that you tailor it to make it as short as possible while still capturing the main things that you did relevant to the job. You don't want to throw in all sorts of stuff that the employers don't really care about. They don't care about if you worked at a candy shop or if you did cash while you're applying for, a bank position or an accounting position or whatever. Or maybe they do care if you did cash, but that's not sufficient for an accounting or a banking job. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, it could be news that your partner gets a new job because, right, it's 7th house. Maybe a partner or spouse gets a new job, or recognition. It could be your own recognition for a collaboration, or it could be your spouse getting recognition or partner. So how about our Capricorn Rising friends? Well, what the heck? Well, for Capricorn Rising, right? That means Mercury's touring your 9th house and rules your 6th. So the 9th house is wisdom and spirituality. The 6th house is obligations, enemies, and your pets. So, wisdom, pets. Does that mean my cat is going to give me a dissertation on the Chinese Revolution? I don't know. Meow! Chairman Meow. But you see, our mind is on what we believe here. There could be something enlightening or introspective that we encounter, right? That throws us back on ourselves in an internal investigation. You could be captivated by a new idea or ideology. It could just mean you have added responsibilities at your church, mosque, synagogue, or spiritual organization or community of any type, right? Whatever it is. It could be the Self-Realization Fellowship or whatever. Or people at church or whatever you go to in your spiritual community spreading gossip and lies about you, which is very characteristic of what? Churches and spiritual communities and the like, right? At least I remember that from my own very strict Catholicism. Now, what about our Aquarius Rising friends? You see, this is me and my people. So that means Virgo's passing through our 8th house. Mercury's passing through our 8th house and rules our 4th. Yeah. I'm sorry, our 5th. Our 5th house of children and fun and romance. So the 8th house, I'm thinking debt, investment, letting go, fears, stuff like that, traumas. While the 5th house is children, fun, romance. So I'm thinking of mind on our money and the credit card bill. So we've accumulated some debt, us Aquarius Risings, me included. And so we could be planning our payoffs or how we're going to pay it down, getting on a payment schedule. transferring money or using money to pay things off, right? Or it could be taking on new debt or owing money, investment for a particular reason, right? Usually that investment would have to do perhaps with your own fun, or fifth house. I also think of small businesses because they're a bit of a gamble. You don't want to lose money to gambling. That could happen because the fifth house is gambling and fun and all that. And the eighth house can be financial losses. So just watch that. Now, it could be addressing payments or payment schedules regarding legal things too. Like I'm thinking alimony or child support because it's children, fifth house, right? Investing in your children or your business or fun activities, right? Addressing unresolved issues from childhood, right? Fifth house, children. The eighth house is like the clearinghouse of accumulated traumas and fears. It's where we process things. I know that's more of a modern take on it, but it was known as the place of inaction in ancient astrology. So it's not a time for acting, it's a time for reflection and the darker, unseen processes that happen psychologically, right? So introspection, reflection, or even therapy, going to psychological therapy. Now, how about our Pisces rising friends? So this means Mercury's going through your seventh house of partnerships and marriages and rules the fourth house of the parents and the home. So this means your mind on your relationships. You and a partner could move in together, right? Seventh house, fourth house. Or you could meet their parents or something with their parents, right? Or family. One of your parents gets married and meets a new partner. Like I said, news with your spouse's parents and or their living situation. But it could be negotiation, perhaps with a spouse or former spouse regarding a legal matter. Again, probably having to do with the living situation. Maybe you bought a house together or shared property together or something. And also legal opponents. This could be a former partner being a legal opponent. Okay. Now, I hope this was useful. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. This is really helpful for me because it helps the algorithm. And again, please like, subscribe, comment below, and share the shit out of my content, or I will haunt your dreams. Okay? I mean, please, please, please. It helps me out, and I want this to be a thing because I really enjoy doing it, you know? So now check out my other videos and subscribe and click the bell to see when my new videos drop. And I do wonderful readings. They're the best. See all my contact information below in the description. And I love you. You're beautiful. And have a wonderful whatever you're having.